Great. Thank you so much for the introduction. Let me go ahead. Oh, I'm not able to share my screen. Could you check the settings?
Try now.
While we're fixing that, I will add on a little bit to my introduction and my bio. So yes, back in 2016 and 2017, while I was still living in China, I was a live streamer on several Chinese social media platforms. Back then, e-commerce live streaming didn't exist, but even though I've gotten out of personally live streaming myself, I've paid close attention to the development of the industry since then. So I still have a very close watch on it and a very strong, I think, personal connection to the industry. Okay. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can.
I think it should work now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me try this again. Hold on one second. Maybe because sorry, just a second. Trying to share it. For some reason, maybe because it was disabled for a moment. I'm just having to. Sorry, not sure what's going on here. Okay, now I got it working. Perfect. Okay, I just had to update on my end. Okay, great. So you can all see my screen now? We're good? Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I will get right into things. I might ask if everybody that's, I don't know, if people could just turn their personal videos off, that might be good, because I think it's a little bit distracting for everybody that's trying to see my presentation. So for anyone watching, if you don't mind just turning your video off for now, that would be useful, I think. And then, of course, during the Q&A section, definitely feel free to turn them back on again. It's great to actually get to look at you guys and see everyone, but I think it'll be useful for right now. So I'm going to start the presentation off by focusing mainly on the Chinese live commerce industry. And then in the second half, I will talk about what I see happening in the West and whether or not live commerce will take off in places like the US or Europe. So really, live commerce has been around for a while. I think Taobao started kicking off e-commerce live streaming in late 2016, really pushed it into 2017, but it wasn't until about 2019 that live streaming e-commerce really started to take off in China. And so, we were seeing all throughout last year that it was becoming a very, very popular sales channel. More and more platforms, influencers, brands were adopting it. But really, what pushed the industry to become so mainstream and what everybody's really talking about it right now is because of COVID-19. So, after COVID-19, when offline retail was shut down, consumers were quarantined and couldn't visit stores. This was really the perfect opportunity for a lot of consumers who had never tried watching e-commerce live streaming or had never bought anything through an e-commerce live stream. This really created the perfect situation for them because they didn't have that offline alternative. So we've really seen that, multiple platforms have been adding this feature now. More and more consumers are trying it, and it's truly become mainstream in China. And even though obviously China has recovered, largely recovered from the coronavirus, and offline retail has reopened, but we're still seeing a very, very strong use of e-commerce live streaming now that many brands and consumers have adopted this medium. So you can see here that Taobao Live reported that in early February, live stream sessions on the platform had increased 110% year over year, and the number of merchants using it for the first time grew 719% from January to February. So, between the time that people the quarantine period started, a ton of brands and people really got on the bandwagon there. So that's just, a little bit about why so many people are interested in this topic right now, because it's just really taking off in China. But I want to take a step back and get a better look at the industry and what is e-commerce live streaming. So, e-commerce live streaming is really only a portion of the Chinese live streaming industry landscape. There's a lot of different formats of live streaming. Like I mentioned, back in 2016, 2017, I was on many of the apps shown here in the entertainment column, what's called entertainment live streaming. Then you're probably familiar with esports live streaming. I think esports live streaming has been the most successful here in the West with platforms like Twitch, right? We've seen a lot of education providers in China bring their courses online, similar to what you might find here with what we're doing right now. We're having a webinar online. There are many education platforms, many, business learning platforms that have adopted live streaming. Also, a lot of short video platforms that have incorporated live streaming features into their platforms. So there's really, live streaming is a massive industry in China, and e-commerce is just a component of it. But really, as I said, 2019 and now 2020 have really been the peak time where, the majority of the focus is on the e-commerce live streaming industry and less so on the other types. Here I just touch on the, again, the different categories. They all have different monetization models. So, whereas we see some of the entertainment, gaming, live streaming are focused more on education or virtual gifting for monetization, with e-commerce, we're really talking about product sales, right? So that's the, the big difference here is the monetization formats between each of the different platforms. Won't spend too much time on this though. So I want to get into a little bit more about what is e-commerce live streaming. For those of you that, there's probably a mix of people watching right now. I don't know how many of you have actually seen an e-commerce live stream, how many of you are familiar with it, but just to give a little context. So this is the most common comparison that I get is, here if you're trying to explain to somebody here in the West, or you see any article, English language article here in the US, they always compare it to QVC or the Home Shopping Network, right? And yes, that is a relevant comparison, but it really doesn't capture the essence of what e-commerce live streaming is like. And that's mainly from a experience and a product perspective. So this is an example, right? I went on to try and find Home Shopping Network's live experience. And as I highlighted here, right, they said, always live, always interactive. And that's really not the experience that I felt, right? Even though they said it was live, you could stop it, you could start it, you could move forward, move back. It didn't really feel live at all. It felt like I was watching a pre-recorded video. And, they said always interactive. I searched all throughout the page, could not find any way whatsoever to interact with the host, right? Another thing that, when you try and make this comparison, here with QVC or HSN, you look at the hosts and you can tell what target audience they're going after, right? The hosts are all much older. They're all middle-aged. There's even some hosts that I would call in the senior category. And so you can tell they're really trying to reach that target audience. Whereas in China, live streaming hosts, whether it's a brand host or whether it's an influencer, they're all young, and their target audience is really people anywhere from their 20s up into their mid 30s, really, are the core target audience. And another thing that I really took away from this is that, this experience, the way that it was shot, the way that everything is set up, it was really designed for a TV or for, looking at on your desktop computer, not a mobile experience at all, whereas all of the Chinese experiences are for mobile users. So I just had a clip of it here, but that's not too relevant. But I think, if you've watched this, you can just tell that it's really not an interactive format, not very appealing to watch. So it's not the greatest comparison. So now I want to take a look at what live streams in China are like, right? So we'll start with the example on the left, and this is from an a very popular Chinese domestic beauty brand called Perfect Diary, and they have their sales associates on multiple platforms, all, I think at least 4 different platforms that I've seen, hosting live streams about their products. I mean, pretty much at any time of the day, you can find somebody from this company live streaming about their products. So I want you to take a look at the video, and I'll kind of talk over top of it. While you're watching the video, you can click right in, you can look at the product, you can still see what the live streamer is doing, you can still hear her, you can still hear everything she's saying. She starts talking about a new product. You can keep listening to that while you're scrolling through the product on the product page within Taobao, right? So you can click on the product, you can put it in your cart. You're still hearing her the whole time. You're still seeing the video, and you can click right back into the video when you're done to continue watching the live stream. You can also see that she is, even though you may not be able to hear this, sorry, I'll go back. Even though you may not be able to hear it unless you're a Chinese speaker, the entire time that she was talking just now, she had key points that she's trying to get across, right? She has a certain set of products that she needs to talk about today. She has key points that she needs to make about those products, but she is also very actively answering questions that are coming through right there at that moment from the audience, right? And she is adapting what she is going to present that day based on the feedback from the audience, what the audience wants to see, the questions that they're having. She's trying on products in the moment. She's giving them suggestions based on, somebody says, my skin is lighter, I'm going to this occasion, blah, blah, blah. She is customizing her presentation to that audience, right? Making it a very social experience. Plus, you can see the big difference in these live streams versus what you are seeing from Home Shopping Network is that they're all on mobile devices, right? And the host is very close to you. It feels like you're FaceTiming with a friend. It gives it a much more intimate feel to it. Now, the other one that I'm going to show is from an extremely famous live streamer called Austin Lee, and he's known for his very energetic streams. He really gets the audience going, can hype them up a lot. But I think what was key about this clip here is that, he in Chinese e-commerce live streams, they really leverage product giveaways throughout their live streams to really get the audience excited, to get the audience to keep them within the stream for a longer period of time, and to keep them engaged. So here he starts right off his stream. He starts his stream. You could tell he's very enthusiastic, right? And he starts off his stream right away with a product giveaway. So he's holding a product giveaway at the moment, and then at the end of his stream, see this paper that he's holding here? He's hyping the audience up. He's saying, look at all these products that we're going to talk about today. They're all from these top brands. We have so many products to go through. He's really getting people excited and wanting to watch it. It's entertainment as well. So basic user experience from a product perspective, so you'll find this will look pretty similar across all of the platforms, right? So like you saw just now, it's a vertical mobile format. You will have the top left corner will show the name of the brand or the live streamer. The bottom corner, you'll see the comments from the audience. It's very easy to type in a comment and interact with the host of the stream. Then in the bottom right corner of the stream, you'll find a shopping cart. And in that, you easily click on the shopping cart. You can scroll through all the items that are available during that live stream. And as I mentioned before, you click in to look at the item, but you can still watch the live stream in a floating window and still hear everything that they're saying. And you can, while you're watching the live stream, you can immediately, do a one-click purchase because usually these platforms are integrated with Alipay or WeChat Pay. So you can do a one-click purchase and you're able to buy the product while still watching the live stream. To give you some perspective as to how many players that there are in the market now in China. So Taobao, as I mentioned, is really the original. They were the ones who really kicked off e-commerce live streaming in China, and they've been the pioneers with this model. They've been doing it for going on 4 years now, and they've really put e-commerce live streaming as a focal point of their strategy, and really heavily incorporated it into their platform. But there are many other platforms that have gotten on the bandwagon. So you'll see now, post COVID-19, pretty much, I think every large social media platform in China now has e-commerce live streaming functions. And while none of them are quite at the market share that Taobao is, we've definitely seen platforms like Douyin, which is the Chinese version of TikTok. We've seen Kuaishou taking up quite a bit of the market share. WeChat has recently introduced mini program live streaming, and even though that's very early stages, I think that has a lot of potential. All of these players are really focusing very heavily on this medium. They all have slightly different target audiences, but generally the same kind of setup as far as the product, the actual user experience with the product. So I want to talk about this because I think that this topic, why e-commerce live streaming is so popular, can be a little bit hard for people to understand, especially if they've never watched it before, and aren't able to really experience it for themselves, in Chinese. So I find that there's 4 main reasons, right? So the first one is product discovery and education. So, one of the reasons that Taobao has been so strong on pushing, Taobao, Tmall, Alibaba has been so strong on pushing e-commerce live streaming on their platform is because they have said, for a platform like them, for an e-commerce platform, if you don't incorporate features that allow for product discovery, you're really going to limit the amount of sales that can happen on your platform. People are just going to come to your platform when they need to buy something. They search for that product, they scroll through the various products, they buy it, boom, they're done. They're off the platform, right? And that's not Alibaba's goal. Their goal is to keep you in the platform and on the platform for as long as they can. They want you to discover more and more products. They want to encourage impulse buying, right? And e-commerce live streaming is the perfect way to do that, right? You get on, you start watching a stream, you maybe get on because you want to look at one product, but then you see the next product that they pull out, and you just keep watching, or maybe you keep watching because you want to win that prize that's coming up, right? And while you're watching and waiting for that prize, you discover other products and you end up buying them, right? So there's also a lot of consumers that are now going to these streams because they want to go to the streams and discover products, right? A lot of consumers, it may be in lower tier cities in China who maybe don't have access to a lot of these maybe more international products from international brands, cross-border, things like that. They want to go to these live stream live streams and get advice from the streamers. They want the streamers to choose the best products for them, and they want to be able to discover products from brands that they're never going to find in the city that they're living in, right? So number two, e-commerce live streaming can build trust in the product. So I'm sure that if any of you have ever tried shopping on, say, Taobao or some of the other Chinese e-commerce platforms, you'll know that the photos in the photos of the products are often very photoshopped. Sometimes you will buy things and when it arrives, it's not what you thought it was going to be. You know, consumers really need to spend a lot of time to sort through which products are actually good online. And the thing about e-commerce live streaming is it's much harder to fake what a product looks like, the product's quality in a live stream, right? It's much more real, much more raw. It's a lot harder to hide. You know, if somebody's trying on a piece of clothing, you can clearly see the cut of the clothing. You can see what the fabric is like. You can get a better feel for the size and the quality of it, right? So and people also will build, trust and what they see as a relationship with these live streamers, right? If they come and watch them all the time, they really start, and they've bought one product from them and found that it was a good product, then they'll start to develop that trust and keep going back to that one live streamer. Point number three is a key reason I think why a lot of people will watch, the big live streamers on Taobao is that, a lot of times, to incentivize people to purchase right away, and to drive a lot of sales, brands will often provide very intense discounts or special deals, to drive that purchase, saying that, you can only get this price during this live stream. After this live stream, this product won't be available. It'll be much more expensive. They're using the scarcity to drive a lot of conversions. But that means that a lot of consumers will go to these live streams just because they see it as an opportunity to possibly get a product for a really good price, a very good deal. And then the fourth reason I think was, extremely relevant during the COVID-19 period, and why I think it's such a pity that, none of the platforms here in the US were really able to capture this the same way that the Chinese platforms did. But, the reason that e-commerce live streaming took off so much during COVID-19 in China was because it's the closest thing that you can get to an offline in-store experience, right? You're really, especially if a sales associate is running the stream, and telling you all about the product, it feels quite similar to, going into a store and being able to touch and feel and see the product yourself, right? It's really the closest experience that you can get. And I think that, some people are wondering, okay, well, now that, since the quarantine is over, is this going to be as relevant anymore? And I think in China it will be, because like I mentioned, for people living in lower tier cities, which is where e-commerce live streaming is really the most popular in China, is among consumers in lower tier cities. Even after the quarantine is over, there's a lot of products that they don't have access to offline. They have to go to the big cities like, Beijing, Shanghai, or maybe even some of the second tier cities. But when you get to those third tier cities and lower, they don't have as many opportunities to see products from a lot of these, say big international brands offline. So they like to go and watch e-commerce live streams to try and get a better idea of what these products are like. And when we talk about e-commerce live streaming, there's some different formats, and I'm going to call out three of them. So I think the one that we hear the most about and kind of gets the most hype these days would be the live streams with top influencers. So you're mainly thinking of the live streaming broadcasters on Taobao Livestream, such as the one I showed earlier, Austin Lee, or there's another one called Via. They're some of the top streamers. And they are able to help brands, achieve massive sales numbers. They can sell out thousands of products in less than a minute. Via sold a rocket, like an actual rocket ship. They can sell anything, really. But working with these streamers comes at a high cost, a very, very high cost. Brands might not, they might even lose money working with these streamers. But if your brand is looking to reach a massive Chinese audience, you're trying to grow brand awareness, you want that great PR exposure, then, working with one of these influencers is the way to go. Another type of live streaming that we see a lot would be the professionally generated content, or PGC type content. And this would be much more like a fashion show, a product launch. It's a much more orchestrated experience that's being live streamed. You have maybe a professional TV host type person, and there's usually a more professional set, and it's a little bit more stale, a little bit more like the Home Shopping Network stream that I showed you earlier. And then the last type of format, which has become very popular recently and is one that I highly recommend brands consider, and that a lot more brands have been getting into, is building out their own internal live streaming teams, working with their sales associates and people internally to have them start streaming on behalf of the company. And with this, you have a lot less risk. You can be streaming on a daily basis. And the role of this type of live streaming is much more of that replicating the offline experience, providing customer service, educating consumers about your product, giving them that personal touch online. So again, we saw a lot of brands that were implementing this during the COVID-19 quarantine in China. So I know there's probably a lot of people here today that are interested in kind of the actual product itself. And, earlier I mentioned that, yes, you can compare e-commerce live streaming to QVC and the Home Shopping Network, right? It is a valid comparison. But the Chinese platforms are so much more. And part of the reason that the Chinese platforms are so much more is because of the features that are included, right? So as I mentioned, live streaming is a massive industry in China. And so these e-commerce live streaming platforms have taken other features from other types of live streaming and pulled them into e-commerce live streaming. And I think that a lot of these features are things that, when we'll talk a little bit later about kind of the future of live streaming in the West, I think that even if we see some solutions coming in the West, they're not going to be as robust and have nearly as many advanced features as the Chinese live streaming platforms do. So I just want to go over a couple of these features. The two that I show on this page are loyalty and social sharing mechanisms. So within the platform, it's built in that by sharing this live stream with your friends and family, you can automatically get a coupon which you can redeem right during that live stream. Or the other type that I show here, you can share this live stream with a friend, and every time your friend watches a live stream over the next 100 days, you will receive kind of like what it's called, it's a red packet in Chinese, but essentially it's like a cashback almost. You'll receive a very small cash reward, a random amount, every time that your friend watches a live stream over the next 100 days. So you can actually earn money by sharing the live stream with your friend. Some other great additional features that are built in, excuse the awkward picture here that I took of myself. But one of the most popular industries for e-commerce live streaming is the beauty industry. So they have built in features into the e-commerce live stream where while you're watching the live stream, you can click on a button and you can do an AR try-on of the products that are being featured in that stream. So here I was watching one by MAC Cosmetics. I click in. They only allow you in the AR try-on to try on the specific products that are being featured in that stream. So I can, listen to what the streamer is saying. If I'm interested in a product, I can go try it on in the AR experience. And then I can purchase it immediately in the AR experience, or I can go back to the live stream and purchase it there. But I thought this was, a really excellent way to combine live streaming and other technologies together, right? And then here on the right is, so we're talking about how live streaming can kind of replace that offline experience, add more connection between, more connection and more intimacy than a usual digital shopping experience. And here they take it to the next level. So say you're watching the live stream, you look at a product, you really want to buy the product, but you still have some questions about it, and you still want more of a personal consultation about it. You can actually go add a beauty advisor, a makeup advisor from MAC. You can add them on your WeChat, which is, a popular chat app in China. You can add them on WeChat, and you can chat with them directly and say, hey, I was looking at this product in the live stream. I'm interested in buying it, but I'm not sure if it's going to fit my skin type or whatever, right? So they're allowing you to even take that to the next level of personalized experiences. So that's just some of the additional features from a product perspective that I think that they've added in that really make it so much more than just watching somebody selling a product. So now that I've talked about, live streaming in China and giving you a very brief overview of that, there's so much more that we could dive into. I know that there's probably many of you that are thinking, will this take off in the West? Is this something that could actually happen here? Something that we could see some of the big players here adopt? So I just wanted to give my thoughts on this. And I just want to caveat that, part of my perspective on this was that after I moved back to the US about a year or two ago, I was actually working for a US-based live streaming company. Now, given this live streaming company was an entertainment live streaming company, but, through this experience of working with this company, I was able to get also a very strong grasp of the Western live streaming space and get a good perspective on that, which is, what I'll be able to bring some of my thoughts based on that into this conversation. So one of the things that when I have been I read some articles or hear other people's perspective on, can e-commerce live streaming take off in the West? And one of the biggest things that I hear people to say, and, an assumption that they make, is that Western audiences won't watch live streams, that it's a consumer behavior issue. Like this format just does not fit Western consumers. They have YouTube, they have Instagram, they have so many other platforms. Like they're just not going to watch live streams. And I don't think that's true. And at the same time, I don't think that e-commerce live streaming will ever take off in the West to the same extent that it has in China. I doubt that it will ever become as mainstream in, say, the US as it has become in China. But I still think there is a huge space and a lot of potential for this format here in the West. So first of all, there is an audience for live streaming in the US. Twitch, massive platform, right? Massive platform. YouTube has live streaming. TikTok has live streaming. Instagram, we've seen a huge uptick in live streaming in Instagram during COVID-19. Facebook Live, right? So there is an audience for live streaming in the US. And I think a lot of people who say that there isn't an audience for live streaming in the US, they aren't that audience, which is why they feel that way. You're not the target audience doesn't mean that there isn't a target audience. I know, as a matter of fact, for the company that I worked for, that there is a massive audience for live streaming use in the US. The second thing that I hear, is that, people aren't going to want to buy products from, say, Instagram or social platforms, which again is not true. And maybe if you feel that way, you're not the target audience. But you know, we can see from a lot of the features that Instagram has been slowly introducing over the past couple of years, that, you know, they are making the platform more commercial and making it easier for people to buy products from the platform, because there is a desire from consumers to purchase products through the platform, right? They just want the ability to purchase products through Instagram without it interrupting their experience, right? They want it to be built in a way that they don't feel like ads are interrupting that, you know, their experience of looking through those people that they follow on Instagram. So it's not about how you monetize it, but doing it in a way that it fits consumers' needs and preferences. Another thing that I cite here is, you know, you look at the popularity of unboxing videos. I mean, unboxing videos are one of the largest categories on YouTube, right? And an unboxing video is essentially a recorded version of what you see happen going on in an e-commerce live stream. So, you know, consumers have a desire to see what a product is like up real close, get a better view of it than what they can see from an e-commerce platform, right, before they buy it. Instagram stories. I follow a ton of fashion bloggers on Instagram, and their stories are filled with what they call try-on clips, where they put a piece of clothing on and they talk about the details of the clothing and they try it on in an Instagram story, and they include a swipe in the swipe up feature, a link to buy the product. How is that so different than an e-commerce live stream built into Instagram? So I think we can see that, you know, the consumer behavior is there. And the last thing that I want to point out is that this is already happening, right? So during COVID-19, numerous beauty brands in the US have started offering virtual beauty consultations. And some of those are even done through one-on-one video experiences, right? The beauty brand Credo said that consumers who shop using Credo Live are, you know, more likely to make a purchase than those who don't, right? So, you know, beauty brands were some of the first brands in China to adopt e-commerce live streaming. And like I mentioned before, they're some of, you know, pretty much every international beauty brand in China is using e-commerce live streaming at the moment. They're really the leaders of this e-commerce live streaming trend in China, you know, beauty and fashion. And so to me, the fact that numerous beauty brands have already started doing this during the COVID-19 period and are seeing success from it, you know, is a signifier that the same thing could happen here and that there's demand for it from consumers here. But the question is, who could do it? Right. So what would need to happen for e-commerce live streaming to go mainstream in China? I think that it's really going to take the large social media and e-commerce platforms. You know, it's going to take them making it a priority. So the ones that I'm going to highlight are Amazon, Instagram, and TikTok as the ones that I think have the most potential, right? And, you know, real quick, I know we're getting a little tight on time, and I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A here today. But, you know, the benefit for these platforms, right, for social media platforms, adding e-commerce live streaming is a way to increase your advertising revenue. It increases the time that users spend in the app, and it provides another monetization method for influencers and brands, right? So, and for e-commerce platforms, increases advertising revenue. Again, it aids in product discovery, like I mentioned before. It increases the amount of impulse purchases. And lastly, I want to make a point that I haven't made yet, but there have been Chinese e-commerce platforms that have said that adding e-commerce live streaming actually increases customer satisfaction and reduces the return rate, because consumers are able to get a much better view of the product before they buy it. And this is particularly true with, say, the fashion industry, because typically during these e-commerce live streams, you know, for fashion, they will include different models that have different body sizes so that the consumer can really get a good idea of whether or not this clothing would look good on their body shape and size. So particularly when it comes to fashion, you know, I've been told straight from these platforms that they've had a reduce in return rate after adding e-commerce live streaming. So real briefly, Amazon I think Amazon, so much potential, so much potential. They added e-commerce live streaming over a year ago, and they have barely improved it since adding it. The feature is completely hidden on their website and the platform. The user experience is extremely poor. It's really has gotten no traction. And so unfortunately, even though it has massive potential, because Amazon is in a very similar situation to, Alibaba's Tmall and Taobao, and we've seen the amazing success that they have had, it could be a huge driver of more traffic and sales for Amazon, but I think it's very unlikely that they're going to be the ones that really succeed at it, seeing how little effort they've put into it since launching it. The next, I'm not going to bother looking at this, but you can go watch it yourself. They're not that great. Moving on to Instagram. So I'm sure that all of you heard recently that Facebook just announced Shops, which will enable businesses to set up an online store that can be used across Facebook and Instagram, allowing people to directly shop for products in both of those platforms. But live commerce is only an aspect of this new Shops feature that they're rolling out. So I still think it'll take a while before we see them. They're still just working now on testing the live feature, and I think that they're probably going to roll out the Shops feature first, and then be slowly rolling out the live feature. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think when you compare it to the Chinese platforms, it's likely that that Instagram's version of live commerce will be very basic in comparison to what the Chinese platforms offer. I do think that Instagram has incredible potential, though, for this feature. I'm just not sure that they will. I'm not sure how well they can execute on it, just based on the way that they've rolled out products in the past and what they've said so far about it. But we'll wait and see. Verdict is still out. And then the last platform that I want to mention is TikTok. I think that there's huge potential for TikTok, for e-commerce live streaming on TikTok, because as many of you probably know, TikTok is owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company, and Douyin, which is the predecessor of TikTok, or the Chinese version of TikTok. When it comes to the development and maturity level of the platform, Douyin is probably about 2 years ahead of TikTok. And as I mentioned, Douyin now has e-commerce live streaming, and it's become very popular, especially over the recent couple months during the quarantine period. So, based on the success that we've seen, the fact that that ByteDance has already created this feature for Douyin, and they could easily roll it out on TikTok. The fact that a lot of TikTok's features have been directly taken from Douyin, there's a very strong correlation between the two platforms. So I think it's pretty safe to say that it's something they'll consider rolling out in the near future. The only potential issue that I see is, over in China, Douyin has collaborations with Alibaba and JD.com, the two largest e-commerce platforms. So they would just need to figure out, who are they going to work with here in the US? Or are they just going to be working with brands on an individual basis? The commerce portion of it might be a little bit more difficult for them to figure out. And also the second issue that I see is that right now TikTok still skews slightly younger, and the content isn't as mature yet. I think over on Douyin, the content has kind of stepped away a little bit from all of the dancing videos. There's much more developed content on the platform now. So I think that, it might not be time yet for TikTok to really add that feature in yet. So I'm going to wrap things up. I know I spoke a little bit longer than Ying and Ray were hoping I would, and I want to leave lots of time for Q&A. My main takeaways are that e-commerce live streaming has really become mainstream in China. From what I can see, I don't think that it's going anywhere. I think it will continue to stay strong even after COVID-19 is over. I think that it's the product is extremely advanced over there with a very seamless experience, and it's very easy for users. Very very seamless and convenient user experience. And that, the US is far behind, but the market definitely has potential. We just really need to see one of the big players step up and push the format before it'll really take off. And as I said, I think Amazon, Instagram, and TikTok would be the best platforms to potentially make this happen. So now I'd like to hand it back over to Yingying and Ray, and I guess open it up for questions.
Awesome. Okay, let's go through this super fast. By the way, Lauren, you have a very engaged audience. There's way more questions in this chat than we can possibly cover, but I'll try to throw them at you. All right.
Yes, I'm looking at it right now, and sorry, I probably should have tried to look at them while I was talking.
No worries. Okay. I'll pick out the ones that I think are really interesting. So I'm going to call your name, and if you could unmute yourself and just ask the question in the audio. Marco, you have a question.
Hi, everyone. I just had the question. We started with live streaming formats in the German-speaking countries as well as Poland over the last weeks with a company called Hello Lisa. I'm not sure if you're aware of them, which is let's say a little bit more individual solution, a smaller solution, a startup in Germany. Mm-hmm. We did it for some of the major fashion brands, as well as lingerie brands we are just starting. And we tried a little bit different approach in terms of quality, because you always highlighted the social approach. And when we produce something, it's a little bit more, I know I hate it as well, but QVC-oriented approach, which means we have a small camera team there, a cutting station, and try to bring some, quality is the wrong word, to make it a little bit more high class, especially for the luxury retailers. Do you think this is a value, or let's say value added direction, or you think in the end it will turn out to be more the social experience, which is a little bit easier to produce?
No, I mean, I think that luxury brands do need to have, they do need to put a lot of effort into what, the setting that they're presenting. Actually in China, we saw Louis Vuitton got blasted recently. They received a lot of criticism because they did a live stream that was too casual. They got a lot of feedback that the setting of their live stream looked like a cheap Taobao store, and that that the way that they ran their stream was not reflective of a luxury brand. So I think it's smart that you are. I think that you can have the professional feeling of it. Good lighting, very nice set design. You can have all of that, but still make sure that you maintain an interactive approach with the audience. I think that's really the key way to make it social and the key way to make it more relatable, while still keeping that luxury or that branded feeling to it. I think that's where, like, for example, Louis Vuitton went wrong, was just that they tried to go too far the other way. So I think that's definitely good. Just make sure you keep an interactive nature to it. Otherwise you lose the essence of live streaming.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Next, Stefan, you had a couple of questions, but maybe your first one.
Sorry, are you referring to me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So I'm an investor that's mostly focused on Africa, but some of these trends are just starting to make it there, and there's obviously a lot of restrictions from a communication network perspective. I was wondering, what are some of the biggest differences you see in live streaming and e-commerce in lower tier cities, 4 or 5 in China, versus the high tier cities?
Well, I mean, the low tier cities are actually really where live streaming has taken off the most. And for those cities, there's a very high emphasis on consumer education. So you'll see that the content that they're drawn to the most is the content where they can really ask a lot of questions and get to know the product, because like I said, they don't really have as much access to the product in their daily lives or offline. For them, at least in China, for the lower tier cities as well, I think consumers in the first and second tier cities, they've been exposed to a lot of brands for a long time. They, in some ways, have access to more information. They've likely traveled abroad, right? They have more set opinions about which brands that they like, and while they are willing to try out new brands, they come with a lot more set ideas. Whereas you'll find that the consumers in lower tier cities, the past 5-10 years, their lives have opened up so much, and they've been exposed to so many brands and so much messaging in such a short period of time that they find it overwhelming, and they place a lot of value on finding a live streamer that they like and that they can trust. And there have been, studies and interviews that have shown that, once they find a live streamer that they like, that they'll continually go back to that streamer, and they will trust that streamer and their recommendations. And they actually kind of go to the live stream to cut through all of the noise and just tell me which product should I buy, because they're just feeling absolutely overwhelmed with choice, and they don't know where to look, who to trust, and so that's become a key reason why they go to these streams. And I think even when it comes to, I mentioned these discounts, things like that. Discounts and good prices are definitely attractive to consumers in the lower tier cities, but you'd actually be surprised, I think, to find that for the consumers in the lower tier cities, actually place more emphasis on quality, and that's more of the reason that they're going to the stream, is to learn about the product and the quality of the product, and that you actually find a lot of consumers from first tier cities who are coming to the streams to get the product for a discount, so which surprises a lot of people, but there have been some studies that have actually shown that.
Thank you. This was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
All right, ignore the lawnmower in the background of my audio.
I can't hear it, so we're good.
But go ahead, Swetha. Please correct me on your name too.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much for taking my question. I guess you touched on it earlier with your comment on Louis Vuitton, but I was specifically interested in how sort of luxury brands manage this tension between kind of needing to remain exclusive, but yet being on a very democratic and accessible platform such as live streaming, and whether there's any tension and if that's seen as maybe inauthentic when consumers come across these live streams from these particular brands.
Yeah, actually, this is a question that I've been talking about a lot lately. I was actually just talking to I think an article came out in the Business of Fashion recently where I was talking to them about this exact issue. So it's something that a lot of luxury brands are debating right now. Like, do we jump on the train, or do we, or is it just too far removed from what our brand, like our brand persona is, right? And so I've actually suggested to a lot of luxury brands that they don't need to think about live streaming the way that everybody else does, right? I encourage people to start thinking outside of the box. I think that all the time we are getting flooded with messages about, X live streamer worked with X brand and sold millions of products and, did millions in sales, whatever, we keep hearing a lot of buzz about that, right? But I think for luxury brands, right, they need to be thinking more about that exclusivity, right? And they need to be thinking about, how can we cater to those VIP customers, right? The few that, the 20% that really make up 80% of our sales, right? Instead of reaching that mass audience. And so I've actually been suggesting to some luxury brands lately that they consider WeChat mini program live streaming. And with WeChat mini program live streaming, you have a lot more control over who's attending. You can do private streams. So, a lot of, you could say, invite your loyalty members only, or you could reach out to customers who have bought items within a certain price, above a certain price point over the past year, right? So you can have the live stream experience, that very that very intimate experience, allowing consumers to see the product up close, to talk about the product, to learn about the product, but you don't have to do it in a mass format, and you don't have to do it in such a public way, right? And you can do it in a way that is exclusive. Yeah, that's what I've been trying to talk to brands about lately is, you could use the mass live stream for a product launch, or for a huge holiday like the upcoming 6/18 shopping holiday, or 11/11 shopping holidays. You can use the mass live streams for those type of occasions, and then do much more smaller exclusive experiences the rest of the time.
All right, let's go with Sherry's question next.
Sorry, did you say Shiv?
Actually, you're next, so go ahead too, Shiv.
Oh, thanks everyone. So my question's basically on the differentiation in live streaming approach among the sort of three big e-commerce players. So Alibaba, Taobao, Tmall, JD, and Pinduoduo. And you had a slide, I think before, and it talks about the different demography and sizes of each of the platforms. But are there big differences besides those, or are those the main ones? Like, are these companies approaching it the same way, or is one leaning in more than the others, et cetera?
No, they're doing it I think the largest differences, sorry, would be JD and Alibaba. So Alibaba has actively grown their own influencers, right? Live streaming hosts who can run their own live streams and work with brands, to get a commission. The brand can also go on and have their own live stream, right? So there's a lot of different options as to how you want to run the stream. Whereas JD does not have an influencer network, and all of their streams are much more the type that I mentioned, the more professionally generated content type stream. So their streams are all much closer to the QVC, or the home shopping network type experience. They're usually much like larger scale, run by a brand, as opposed to what we're seeing on Taobao. So the scale is definitely not there with JD.com. And then with Pinduoduo, it's still pretty early to say. They haven't had their live streaming feature for that long, so I think it's a little bit early on to the verdict is still out as to how it'll do on their platform. But I think that the demographic of Pinduoduo is pretty similar to Kuaishou. And Kuaishou, is a video platform, but they have a very large overlap with their user base, and e-commerce live streaming has been very successful on Kuaishou. So I do think it'll do quite well on Pinduoduo. But as far as market share and formatting, I think they're still working on that. So it's a little early to say.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, I wanted to go back to Sherry. If Sherry, you're still on the line, you can be the last question.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, I was just wondering, is this an individual experience for the viewer or the buyer? Like, would you watch a live stream with your friends, or would you typically do it by yourself? And thank you for taking my question.
Yeah, so I think usually more of an individual experience. A lot of times, the most popular times, kind of the peak periods to watch live streams and for hosts to streams are between, I'd say 8 p.m. to like 2 a.m. And really, I'd say 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. is like the key time. So a lot of this is, people back home, they've had dinner, they're bored, nothing to do, and they're watching the live stream on their couch or laying in bed, until they go to bed. So it's typically something that's, done during downtime. And not to say people don't watch with friends, but it's much more of an individual, I think, viewer experience.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so we're out of time here. I'm just going to close it up by directing you to definitely listen to Lauren's podcast. Obviously, listen to our podcast as well. You guys are super engaged. I think this is the most engaged webinar event that we've had so far. The recording will be available online. It will also obviously be in the form of a Tech Buzz China podcast in a month. I wouldn't say anytime super soon. But if you guys want to keep talking, I'll stop the recording and just let the room run.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen as well. Were there I haven't looked through all the questions, but I would be glad to stay on the line for like another 10, 15 minutes if there's additional questions.
Okay, if there's not, we can also close out the room, but there are so many in writing that I can also send them to Lauren.
Sure.
If you want to engage with her, definitely email her.
Someone just asked if you see other opportunities besides e-commerce for live streaming. I think you covered that in the beginning.
Sorry, could you say that? I missed what you were just saying. Yeah.
Oh, do you see other opportunities besides e-commerce for live stream? But I think that was covered.
Here in the US or just in general?
US.
In the US, I mean, the entertainment live streaming space is solid, but I don't think it's ever going to go mainstream. I think, there is quite a significant audience when you look at Twitch, the company that I used to work for, Meet Me, or the Meet Group. If you look at TikTok, some of the other, there's definitely players and there's definitely viewers, but I don't think it's ever going to go mainstream like it did in China. And then there's gaming, obviously, the gaming industry. But again, I just don't think it'll ever get quite to the viewer numbers that we see in China.
Why is that? Why won't it go mainstream?
One is population, and then two is that I think, here we have a lot more entertainment options. There's also in Western countries, I think that not consumer behavior, but societal behavior, I think people are more likely to maybe say go out on the weekday after work, whereas in China there's a lot of people that will go home and watch a live stream. I think there's some societal differences that there's a lot of young people working far away from home who turn to live streaming, whether it's entertainment live streaming, gaming live streaming, e-commerce live streaming, as a way to pass the time and feel like they're interacting with other people, as opposed to say going out and sitting at a bar in the evening. So I think, from a society perspective and then just a population size perspective. And I just think that, e-commerce or entertainment live streaming took off so successfully in China that it really got Chinese consumers and Chinese, the Chinese population as a whole very comfortable with the live streaming medium,